it is what life is about, right?
Yeah.
Communicating, questioning ourselves, and do better, I guess.
Hi, you're listening to Sam and Em Solve the World's Problems.
Big problems, casual conversations.
So many problems.
The amount is, it's honestly, like, it's starting to affect me personally and, like, on a spiritual and emotional level. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to start talking
Okay,
about.
so today's episode, we're going to be talking to an amazing guest. She's 22, she's Tahitian, she's bilingual, and we're going to be talking to her all about what it's like to live in Tahiti.
Yeah, so we chat to her all about the different cultural differences, dating someone from a different culture, and the impacts of COVID on their island nation.
Yeah, it's going to be a great episode, so enjoy. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Judy. How are you?
I'm doing amazing, thank you.
That's good. We're just going to jump straight into a little bit about you. You're from Tahiti, right?
Yep.
Yep, lived there, born there.
Kinda, I've been living here for 22 years old now.
Yep, nice.
Well, no, technically not. I've been living in French Polynesia for 22 years old, but in Tahiti, only for 10.
Okay.
It's weird.
Where did you live before that?
On a different island, kind of smaller. Because sometimes it's funny how people say, yeah, Tahiti, that small island lost in the middle of the ocean. And I'm like, yeah, wait till you see the rest of the islands there. So, it's like a really small island in the middle of a different archipelago. Amazing for childhood. Because you can just run around in the bushes and just live your life till 7 at night. And then the parents will be starting to look for you, which was great.
Nice.
Yeah.
So English is not your first language. What languages can you speak?
My mother tongue is actually French.
Yeah.
And my second language is English. I speak a little tiny bit of Spanish, but shame on me, I do not speak Tahitian.
That's so interesting
I know.
that people from Tahiti don't often speak Tahitian. Why is that?
I think this could be explained by the colonial past of Tahiti, because as not a lot of people know, Tahiti is actually French. It's a French overseas territory, which means that back to the 19th century, I think, we were colonized by French people, which then marked Tahitian as being the language to be erased, replaced by French, which was actually softer than New Zealand and other territory. So I will not complain about that. Starting with my grandma's generation, for example, they were forced to abandon Tahitian, and then they were literally, I wouldn't want to say whipped, but kinda, with the rulers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they were forced to speak French. And some people actually rebelled, like my grandma. Real though. But yeah, French is my first language. And then nowadays, I think it started in 2015, the government decided to promote Tahitian again in schools and stuff as technically a second language before English. But that didn't work out. So Tahitian is still now kind of ostracized, even by Polynesians and Tahitians themselves. Kind of associated with the language of the losers in terms of battles with French and Tahitian people back in those times.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds so crazy to me. Like the literal name of your country is Tahiti. Oh, country? Or is it French Polynesia
island.
Is the country? Yeah, Tahiti's just the island. Yeah,
French
okay, right.
Polynesia,
Yeah. Yeah, so the literal name of your island, the language of that namesake is ostracized within that island.
Yeah.
It's kind of regrettable because even the government is promoting it heavily, everywhere. They're speak the language. But I just look at that and I think, but you are the one who killed the language. And you want the people who have literally assimilated French as their first language to just now think of Tahitian as an equal language, which is very sad to me, I think. Yeah. Oh, well, you see.
Yeah.
I'm still learning. I'm learning.
Yeah, nice.
I'm learning.
I I remember
It's very difficult.
Sam and I had the opportunity to come to Tahiti in 2018, which is kind of where we met you. We just were chatting about, I think we passed each other at a different camp in America a few years before that. But the real time that we kind of all met was definitely when we came to Tahiti in 2018. But I remember some of the older members of the Tahitian congregation and population would speak Tahitian, and that they had a harder time also understanding they didn't know English, which is, I mean, fine. So we had a more difficult time communicating with them. Is it kind of like more of the older population still know Tahitian?
Yes, I would say it's a question of age first. My grandma's generation and maybe up to my dad's generation, I'd say people born between 1940 and 1970 or 80 know how to speak Tahitian fluently. Like my dad, it's actually my dad's first language.
Oh, yeah.
French is his second, and English is his third. Yeah. And so I'd say the older generation knows about Tahitian very well. French, a little bit less. English, probably not.
Yeah.
And then you also have to take into account the geography of the population. I'd say people who live in farther islands, such as the archipelagos of the Tuamotus or, Marquesas are like Tuamotus, I'd say, know more about Tahitian than they do about French or English. And then you have to take into account their own regional language.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting too.
Yeah, nice. So what else, what do you do? You've just finished your degree?
I graduated last year in 2019 from, I majored in English from what is called, I'm sorry for the French literal translation, but it's about literatures, languages, and civilizations from foreign and regional English countries.
Nice.
Yeah, I studied about British civilizations, American civilizations, actually also the Pacific. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
The Pacific and the relationship they have with English, imperialism, post-colonial literature. That was super nice. Yeah.
Nice.
I may get carried away when we talk about that later.
That's fine. That's great.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
No, that's really good. I did a brief course in kind of imperialism and colonialism as well. So I thought that was super fascinating.
Yeah, that really was. And I really like we'll talk about that later because we have like a lot of other juicy things to talk about, don't we?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I remember when we visited you for an event in Tahiti, you were one of the people who was often relied upon as the translator.
Yeah.
Right. And even when we've been to the United States and we had events over there.
You're like a translator in training over there, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
It's so cool. I remember being super jealous. Like, just being a translator looks like one of the most fun kind of things to do, but also like a great act of ministry and service. Like, what an amazing thing to be able to do for people. It's so impressive.
Mm-hmm. And then you feel I felt really proud of myself. I was like, dang it, I made it. I'm helping people.
Yeah.
People actually trust me. Wow.
What is it like to be a translator? Is it stressful?
To be a translator, I think it was actually my favorite part, like the favorite thing that I've done. But at the same time, it was so stressful because I thought it was also my least favorite part because I was thinking about what if what I'm trying to say is like not it? Which actually happened quite a lot. Quite a lot. Like I remember.
Your French to English translations were always very on point, or at least they made sense to us, whether or not you were saying the right thing.
But it was just like
did you ever come
other way around, translating from from English to French. That was hard. That was hard because my brain has been conditioned to think from French to English easier than from English to French. So I had a hard time. Like I remember that time, everyone laughed at me. And like all the English speakers could not understand it, but all the French speakers were like literally laughing out loud. And I was like, why are they laughing? And then just just did this little light up in my head. It says, I said condom instead of preservatives. You know, like food and stuff. And I was like, oh my goodness, why did I do that? But then everything was like, oh, that makes you likable. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of very embarrassed, but I'm glad you like me. Like, yeah. And I had to find something to talk about after that, because it was like silent and everyone was laughing. And I was like, please stay protected. That's what matters. And then everyone was like, I see. And I was like, yeah. And everyone laughed again. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm done. I do not want to speak anymore. I'm done with translating. And here I was 5 minutes later trying to translate again.
Yeah, because there would have been a lot of pressure at these events, because there's some high-profile people there. I remember for one of the events, and I'm not sure you translated for this particular one, but I think the Prime Minister of... Was it Prime Minister or the...
I think he was the president.
Sorry, the president of Tahiti, is it? Or French Polynesia?
Yeah, French Polynesia. So like we have a very specific status when it comes to our politics, because we're still technically a French overseas territory, but we have an intern autonomy status thing, which means that we can still kind of decide on the different policies about French Polynesia. When I say we, I mean the people, and then the head of the people, which is the president. So yeah, it's very peculiar, but yeah, we do have a president. It's a small title, I'd say, for small islands, but it still matters somehow.
I just wanted to add on to the translating funny stories. I remember being at SPEC, so one of our camps in America in 2018, I think it was, and I think Judy, you were there as one of the leaders of the Tahitian delegation. I was there with Caledonia. Sam was there with Australia. But I remember we were in a service and it was pretty serious. I think it might have been like communion or a nighttime service, and one of the other translators, the Tahitian delegation all had like sort of like radio kind of things, and somebody was translating into the radios for them and they could listen to that. And all of a sudden we're in this serious service and the Tahitians just started laughing, and nobody, like, it wasn't funny. Whatever had been said into the radio, nobody else knew what was going on. But I think it might have been Irv, who was one of the translators. She's hilarious. And
I remember that moment. It was actually a live translation. I think it was the Apostle. She was translating from the person in charge of Caledonia. I think it was like that moment when he was doing his sermon.
Yeah.
But then the way she was translating it, it was so hilarious. He said so many things, and then she couldn't remember all the things, so she just went to the essential. Yeah. It was very deep. Like, I could understand his speech, and it was very deep. It was very inspirational, and then she just went there. And like he said, he really developed about I think it was going in the garden and then looking around. And then she was just like, yeah, he went into garden.
It was just such a great...
Yeah, he liked it. Yeah, it was just like so funny.
Yeah.
And we were really embarrassed, actually, when everyone laughed. We just looked at them like, do not laugh. But then all of us leaders were like, bent over because it's so funny.
Yeah.
So funny. Yeah.
I remember being like, damn, I wish I had one of them headsets.
Yeah, I wish I knew what was happening over there.
Comedy show over there.
Yeah. I want to hear, and that's one of my favorite things actually about being in Tahiti, was that we were the minority language, and so most things are translated for us rather than normally. We were the ones with the radios, yeah. Yeah, and so I loved being on the other side of that, because whenever something funny happened, it was for us, and it was so good.
No, you actually understood the struggle. Yeah. And the connection would cut in the middle. And then we're still like trying to translate. And then they're like, we don't hear anything. But then by the time we translators realize that you cannot understand us, the people talking in the microphone, like they do not take into account all the troubles we can go through.
Yeah.
They just keep going and keep going and keep going. And we're like, sorry, we cannot go back on what he said. We'll just follow up. And then everyone's like, yeah, so you went to like the beginning of a story, but then everything that's about adventures and everything is like skipped, and you get the ending that says the end. And we're sorry, it's not our fault. It's just how it is.
Yeah. But still, it looks super fun.
That still adds up to the fun, to the fun and the living together and just like understanding each other's troubles about the barrier of language.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Great. I feel like that's a good kind of intro to who you are, how we know you. Maybe we should jump straight into problem 1.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
So our first problem for you, being from a small, isolated little island like Tahiti, I mean, what are the main sort of struggles for you living on a small island, or what are the great benefits as well?
When I read your questions about what's life on such a small and isolated island, I just had to remember that course I had about Pacific literature, like colonial, post-colonial, and things like that. And there was like a recurrent theme in post-colonial literature about the idea of development and about how the islands in the Pacific Oceans are so tiny, so isolated from the rest of the world. And there's this famous author, actually, called Emily Judd. He's a Pacific Islander, and he wrote a thesis called Sea of Islands. And that's very interesting because he said no one ever questioned the perspective which we use to define an island in the Pacific as tiny or isolated. And I think it's very interesting because that's true. I've never even questioned it myself because I thought, well, it's small, it's isolated. What do you want to say about that? And he said, the people who have always seen and called islands in the Pacific tiny, isolated, are the people from the continents. Mm-hmm. The islanders themselves have never even seen the islands or even the ocean as a way that separates them from each other, but rather as a way that connects them.
Yeah.
And another funny story is that the nautical area of French Polynesia is actually bigger than West Europe. Just saying. Just when continents see French Polynesia as scattered island, Polynesians themselves see that the ocean as a way that connects them so much that even France knows that our economic zone is bigger than Europe. So that's just a way to say that we're not really tiny.
Yeah.
We're actually kind of big.
Yeah.
We actually like it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, because of course,
but then the question. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to say, of course, growing up there, I mean, it's all relative, right? Of course, it wouldn't feel tiny. I mean, and we went to Tahiti, and I mean, I guess in comparison to growing up in Sydney, it's probably about the entire island is probably bigger than Sydney, I would say.
Yeah. I don't know, but I just remember thinking I drove around the whole island today, and it takes me longer to get to work sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think that's more about the metropolitan state of Sydney. Mm-hmm. But the only reason I say that I ask about what's it like being in sort of an isolated country like that is because I know that a lot of people say that about Australia, that we're isolated, that we're separate, and that we're distant because it takes a decent flight to get to anywhere. So I just kind of was putting that perspective on it, but yeah.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I just remembered that.
Yeah.
It's sometimes when we watch the news on TV and stuff like that, they always say when I talk about news, I talk about international news.
Yeah.
Like in France or somewhere else, and they say in this tiny town, 1,000 people, and I'm like, there are islands here in French Polynesia which only have 200 people living on there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but in France, I think it would not even be called small. It would be tiny, the tiniest of islands or something like that. So I actually found it very interesting.
Yeah. I know you do a lot of travel to the US and you have a American boyfriend. What is it like doing the long distance? How often do you get to see him?
How'd y'all meet?
Yeah. How did you meet?
We actually met when I was a trainee, I'd say, at church in 2018.
Yeah.
And so he came down too, because we met online, and then he came down to meet me. He drove 8 hours to come see me. So I was like, that's some commitment there.
Yeah.
So he came 8 hours.
But 8 hours versus
America,
how long was your flight?
13. 13, so we're not far ahead of each other. So I'd say, yeah. It takes me like up to 8 hours to get to California. And if I want to travel to Missouri, it's 5 hours. But if I get to travel elsewhere, it's probably more. Something like that. So,
well, you're closer to these states than we are then.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, it's 8 hours to Hawaii, but it's like 12, 13, 14 hours to California, I think, from here.
Whoa. It takes us 5 hours to get to Hawaii, I think, and 5 hours to get to New Zealand, something like that.
It took like 8 hours to get to you. I think it was,
Yeah, because it was 4 hours to New Zealand and then another 4 or 5 over to Tahiti.
Yeah.
Dude, imagine the people who travel from France or from Tahiti to France, they stay in the plane for 23 hours.
Yeah.
I'm like, who does that? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
That's torture. It's torture. Like, I sit on the plane for 3 hours and I'm done. I'm like, my legs hurt. I want to walk. But no, people do that for 23 hours. I'm like, I respect you.
Yeah.
I do. So yes.
Yeah. So you met him when you were in America. What is it like doing the long distance from Tahiti to America?
And the cultural differences too.
Yeah.
I've actually experienced the differences in our social conventions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that was like a big slap in my face. But I liked it because I could learn a lot from that. I'd say what's very different, I remember, was humor.
Yeah.
Senses of humor are so different according to a country or another one. Tahiti has a very, I would say, dark kind of humor. Or maybe it's just mine. I guess, I think. But just I went there. And then some of the jokes I made actually were taken seriously. And I started to panic. I started to panic up inside my soul. I was like, what did I say? And then sometimes when you talk to someone and when you're in this maybe one-sided type of feeling, the vibe that you get sometimes is one-sided. And I was there and I was like joking. I was laughing at my own jokes. But turns out it was rude. Some of the jokes I made were either rude or very not appropriate for the situation. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I found them funny. So
yeah, that's I find even for us going to America, humor is a very different thing between both cultures. So I can only imagine that would be quite difficult.
Yeah.
Well, even things just like what's considered to be appropriate and what's not appropriate. I remember I walked up the steps when I was staying with a host family in the United States in the Midwest, and it was a bit more conservative. And this was like my first entry into the United States, really. Like I was, I think, like 18 at the time, maybe 19. And I just like, I stepped up the steps and it was a brand new pair of shorts and they ripped. And I was like, God damn it. And like the look on the host family's like face when I said that was like shock and horror. But I was like still just like paying attention to my brand new ripped pants. I was so pissed. And like for me, God damn it is not like really a swear at all. Like, I mean, that's nothing in Australia. But to them, that was like an ultimate curse word. And I just like really offended them. And Brody was there with us at the time and he was like, oh, look, we're so sorry. Like, and he stepped in there and I was like, what are you talking about? What are you sorry about? Like, I'm not sorry. Yeah. But it was just funny. Like even in cultures that you perceive to be so similar, there's those differences. So I can't imagine how, with the extended language barrier. And I think that Tahiti is an even more diverse culture.
Yeah.
It would be, I'm sure you'd run into those kind of problems all the time.
Yeah. I also found the Tahitian humor to be quite like cheeky and like enjoy sort of pushing you and like playing with you like that. So I can only imagine that would get you into trouble.
I mean, there's a saying that says you can laugh about anything, but not with everyone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes it's like that.
Yeah.
But then again, I think it's also about the degree of you knowing someone.
Yeah.
I mean, we've known each other for, let's take 2014, like 6 years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
So we kind of like get each other. But when you meet someone, even worse, like you're actually your boyfriend's family for like a week and you think, oh yes, you actually get them. You feel like, oh my goodness, I really love all of you. But then you say something and you see their faces, and you're like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that. I think it was too soon. Was it too soon? Was it too late? I don't know. Like, I'm really a nice person, I promise. Like, I promise. I'm just very awkward sometimes.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's nice. Everything takes time, and then a lot of communication when you explain it, and you get both sides of the party. If I talk to them, they don't understand it, they tell me and explain them. I feel bad because I didn't acknowledge the fact that my joke was really not funny, and they get it and they say it's really funny, and I'm like, life is it is what life is about, right?
Yeah.
Communicating, questioning ourselves, and do better, I guess.
Yeah. On that, how would you sort of explain the Tahitian culture? Like, I know that there's a really strong sense of like family, and it's kind of a really community-driven culture. Mm-hmm. How would you kind of explain that?
Well, I think that, like, I really don't know, because the fact that we're very family-oriented, for some time, I thought it was actually a thing. Like, it was a universal thing, which means that wherever I would go, if I went to France, if I went to America, if I went to Australia, then we would still have this lingering affinity between family members. But it turns out it's not the case. So, because we have some people who have very tense relationships with their family, and that was a shock to me. I was there. I was like, I thought it was actually a norm. So I wouldn't even be able to explain it myself, because it was sort of the convention for me. But then again, it's probably because my family has always been like that to me. But I also, some of my friends have a very difficult relationship with their family. So I wouldn't know. I wouldn't take my case as the norm. But that is a very difficult question, actually. Because I'd say what makes a culture alive is the way it adapts to its time. So because if you think about that, our culture before the arrival of colonists was about eating each other, literally, and human sacrifices and stuff like that, which is probably not a good thing if it was to come back right now.
Yeah, I'd rather not be sacrificed, if I'm perfectly honest. But
yeah.
You see, and then it kind of evolved about to that extent of being kind of into those types of things, into caring for each other. Like, I know there were like battles and stuff like that, but to explain how it got to be such a community oriented into being together, it also probably has to do with people's religion, people conventions or idea of a family also. So if it has to do with culture, maybe not. If it has to do with other social conventions, probably, but I'm not sure. But it's like very different. They're very difficult too.
Yeah.
One of the key things I remember, and you can correct me if this is just a unique experience to me, but when I arrived at the airport in Tahiti, there were droves of people welcoming me with like ukuleles and leis, and like it felt like the most welcoming environment. Like it was very physical, like lots of hugs, even kissing,
even like seeing us all off. I remember we kind of all went off in drips and drabs, like we left the country in different times, and it was like everybody. Like, I know the family I was staying with, we had to go and say goodbye to the other people, even though I was like, I'll see them in Sydney. I don't want to say goodbye. Like, but we were all going as a family to go and say goodbye and give them some leis. And yeah, it felt like a very welcoming environment like that.
Yeah, that's it's also something that just intrigues me. Somehow how we can see, okay, I'm going to talk about my church, because I have no idea if it's the same in Australia or somewhere else around the world. But when we go to church, everyone there that knows your parents, you have to call them Auntie. You have no idea who this person is, but they know you because they know your dad or they know your mom. So you have to call them Auntie. You have to. Or uncle or grandma or grandpa. You may not even be of the same family from generations above or something like that, but they will always be your aunt and they will always be your uncle. And turns out their kids are always going to be seen as your cousins.
Yeah.
So I think it's also something that has to do maybe with traditions, how there's this practice in Tahiti, which actually it started a long time ago, for as long as I can remember, probably even beyond 1998. I'm pretty sure it goes beyond that, where within a family, you could have two sisters, and the two sisters got married, each on their side to whoever they wanted. And they had kids. But if the first sister could not take care of her kid, she would give it to her sister, who would then adopt the child without necessarily having all the papers for that, because it was just a common agreement that the child will be raised as the sister's baby and not the real mother's one. It happens with sisters or mostly with grandparents. So maybe that's where this idea that no matter where you are, you always kind of be family. Maybe. So yes, I come back to what I said. Maybe it's actually very engraved in culture, but then unconsciously, that could be it. But that could also be completely outside the idea. That could happen a lot.
It sounds like there's
maybe that's what I think.
A lot of respect for family in the Tahitian culture, you know, calling everyone who's older than you like auntie or uncle and stuff like that. And
yeah, do you remember when you came and then with everyone else, even though you could not really understand each other, you always had to refer to someone as Tati.
I actually
that just means auntie.
I don't think I ever called anyone that. I think I just I didn't quite like that language barrier was kind of in my way there. But I distinctly remember the family I was staying with had 3 young boys, and we were like swimming in the pool one day, and the youngest called me what is it, Tante?
Tati.
Tati. Yeah.
Tati.
He called me Tati, and I looked at my host mom and I was like, "What is he calling me? Is it rude? Am I offended?" She's like, "No, it just means auntie." I'm like, "Oh, that's really cute. I like that. Keep doing it."
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I would say it goes even beyond the family or the church sphere. Because when you go to school here for, let's say, preschool and primary school, you always have the teacher's assistant who's always here to assist the kids. And they will always be called Tati. You don't know her. You don't even know her real name. For all of your years of being in the primary school, she will be your Tati. She will be your Tati.
Yeah.
You could have met her when you were 1, maybe not, maybe 2.5. And when you're 4, if you're still at the same school, then she's going to be your Tati until you leave the school. That's actually very cute.
Yeah. It's really wholesome. I found the same thing actually in Hawaii, is that all of the youth and kids that I was with would call just everybody auntie and uncle. And I started doing it mostly because I didn't want to remember anyone's names.
It also helps with remembering. Because like, how would you remember so many names?
Yeah.
When you're so tiny, when you can just refer to everyone as just one single word.
Yeah,
auntie,
definitely.
Auntie, uncle. But then when you get older, it looks kind of rude to call them that. Well, if you're, I think not rude, but it just feels weird. Like it's I don't know. I think when you get to the part when you become like a teenager or something, you need to act proper and call people by the name.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's great though. It sounds like there's a really strong sense of community and family in Tahitian culture, and I love that about it.
Yeah.
Feels really welcoming to be there. At least I was able to experience that anyway.
Yeah.
But maybe it's also because they didn't want to let you go. So they were trying to tell you,
they were weighing us down with those shell lays, to be honest with you. I was drowning under mine.
Yeah.
And I remember they give you a bag, like I give you a plastic bag, and then they're like, prepare yourself, and they just start loading them on, and then you get past the customs and you're like, well, these are all going in this bag. At least they gave me something to carry them. It was great.
Exactly. We're trying to get better at that, I'd say. Because I remember sometimes
more lays or less lays?
You don't see less lays actually, and less presents on the actual day of departure.
Oh my goodness,
so we'd
the
be like
presents
trying
too.
to give you everything. We're going to try to give you everything maybe 2 days before the departure. But then some people are like, man, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to see them at the airport. And then you're at the airport, you're like loaded. You're like, oh, I have too much stuff. I don't even know if they're going to like accept my suitcase or something like that. And you have the Tahitian aunties and the Tahitian uncles with like lots of presents and gifts. And like, I'm done. I'm not leaving.
Yeah, it was so generous.
There's no way
I
my
remember
stuff's going to get to me.
some of the gifts were exorbitant.
I actually had my 20th birthday over there. And I remember before 10 a.m., I had acquired 13 different pearls. Like, I don't know where they came from. I remember watching a woman walk towards me, take the earrings out of her ears, and then give them to me. And I was like, this is ridiculous. It's so generous. It's so much. But I was so overwhelmed by it. I had to go to Adam and be like, what do I do? And he's like, you just have to let it happen and then try to find a way to be generous in response. But you just have to let it happen, basically. It was so generous.
Yeah, you know, when you're Tahitian, it's actually something you do. You don't even think about it. You're like, oh, it's someone's birthday. Do you have anything? Yeah, I have my earrings. I'm just going to give it to her because it's her birthday.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's just like unconscious. Now that you say that to me, I think maybe there are times when Tahitian people, even myself, we were actually very pushy, maybe. Like we may have appeared as pushy to the other people because we're just trying to like be nice. But when it's overly nice, it's actually not a good thing, maybe. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Just how things are.
It was definitely, it was a very nice experience. Like I couldn't do it all the time, but like it was very nice and it was very like humbling to try to just, I don't think I'm using that word right. I hate when people don't, but I don't think I am. Anyway, it was just very like, it was a big culture shock was the main thing, but yeah.
Hi everyone, sorry to interrupt this episode. This is Adam from episode 19, which just happens to be the date of my wife's birthday. So hopefully you enjoyed hearing about my life with her, living in Korea and travelling around the world. And if you did, hopefully you were able to do the 4 S's. To share it, subscribe, support the guys on Patreon, or perhaps speak to a friend about it. They'd really appreciate it.
With that, I'm so curious to hear how have you been impacted by, and this is, I guess, now the second problem.
Thank you.
This is a great segue into this. Have you been impacted and affected by COVID-19 at all?
Yes, who hasn't, actually? It's a global pandemic.
Absolutely.
You know,
but especially with your culture of like, you know, hugs, kisses, like so generous, so
that was
affectionate.
Awful. That was awful. And then people still don't get it right now because we have the government actually. I think it was in March. No, maybe in April. In April, they started a mandatory confinement. They shut down the borders. All the touristic activity was paused. Everyone was supposed to stay home, like ordered to stay home. And no one could actually go to work or anything. Everything was paused. Life was paused. The shops were actually open, but you had to have like a special paper to go there. Because you could literally be arrested anytime by the police. And if you didn't have that piece of paper, then that means you were fined. And I'm talking $800. That's the fine.
Jesus.
And
that is steep.
Oh no, actually this fine is for the masks. For if you don't have a mask in a public area, then you will be fined $800.
Oh,
but
wow.
when you would not have the paper, going out back to April, it was something like $160, around that.
Yeah.
And then we actually became COVID-free after this confinement, and our government decided to open up the borders again, which was actually a good idea because else we would be in a very difficult financial position.
Of course, yeah.
French Polynesia in general.
Yeah.
But then from that, we had a lot of tourists coming over. We also had a mandatory COVID test 19 to be done. It was an order. If you did not have a negative result, then you could not enter the country.
Yeah.
And so on. So I did travel, though, when the borders opened. That was really hard to find a place in America where I could have my test done without necessarily having health insurance or being American.
Yeah.
That was another issue. But I made it. That was nice. I loved it. I loved danger. And then when I came back...
Did you say danger or Denver? We have issues with Denver.
Danger. No, Denver. I've never been to Denver.
No, we don't actually have issues with Denver. I just badmouthed Denver on another episode.
Now, we have gone past the 10,000 positive cases.
In Tahiti?
In Tahiti. No, in French Polynesia, but it's mostly Tahiti and Moorea, the sister island. But then the rest of the islands are actually kind of COVID-free.
That's really bad, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, out of a population of 280,000 people, yeah, 10,000 people is bad.
Whoa!
But we have. I wanted to say only, but that's still a big number. We have more than 50 people who died from COVID-19, and they were all aged between 60 and 80.
Yeah.
So it's mostly the...
But to have 10,000 cases and only 50 people died...
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that is kind of good. But we are... the government is still trying to enforce all of the... I forgot the word.
Like lockdown rules?
I actually also... The measures, actually. The safety measures and sanitary measures. But Tahitian people sometimes do not listen.
Yeah.
We have this... gatherings of all sorts are forbidden. Restaurants have to work on kind of half their capacity when it comes to customers.
Yeah.
And things like that. So it's very hard. And if we go back into confinement, which may happen if intensive care gets just overpacked by people. So it's like, we don't want that. So the government said, we don't want that either, because if we do confine the country again, it's going to be financial death, social death to all Polynesians. So I'm like, please wear your masks. Please have your, wash your hands or have your hand sanitizer or something like that. Actually, the minister, the health department actually asked young people, when I say young, I feel old, but young people like 16, 15 year olds to do a sort of music, like a remix music of the safety measures about saying, please wear your mask, protect yourself, protect myself, protect me, protect our mothers or cousins and stuff like that. Just wear your mask and stay 6 feet apart from each other. So that's pretty great. I think that is pretty much it for the measures. But just no one wants to go back into confinement. I actually spent my confinement with my parents on their island, which wasn't as bad as people in Tahiti because I had the beach and stuff like that. But yes, I would not wish to go back into confinement.
I feel like for people like us, that would actually be like an amazing getaway.
Holiday.
Yeah, it's a beautiful getaway location.
But, when you get...
But still with your parents and it's,
Yeah, that's true. Like, it would be so rude of me to say I didn't like it. I did like it, but that was too long.
Yeah.
Have you ever had this idea of holiday being extended and extended and extended, and you're like, I want to go back to my real life? I mean, too much holidays actually kills the holidays. It's just, I didn't invent it. That's definitely the truth. So, yeah.
It sounds like it's kind of hit Tahiti and French Polynesia in the same way it's hit the rest of the world. Unfortunately, I would have hoped that maybe you would be safe, but yeah.
There are some countries that you close their borders straight away and they didn't get hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's hard. Everywhere we're seeing the economic... You got to balance the economic impacts with protecting the people, and either way people suffer, and it's a really hard time for politics and for people and for jobs. And
what I find really interesting for Tahiti too is that I assume that a lot of their money would come from tourism, and so shutting down the tourism industry would be pretty rough, right?
That's why sometimes I don't understand heated reactions from some people in Tahiti who say, why it's your fault if we have like more than 10,000 people who tested positive now because you decided to open up the borders again. But then we think if we do not open the borders, we do not have any industry which would help us export stuff to make money. How do you think restaurants are going to survive if we do not have tourists?
Yeah.
Which is, again, another unfortunate fact is that France right now is confined. The whole country is confined, which means that we do not have any more tourists coming from France. Like it kind of is like as if the borders were closed, but we're still trying to hang in there. With we have actually financial aids from France, but is this going to be enough to save the economy? I don't know. Maybe let's pray it does.
Yeah.
Sounds like, unfortunately it's almost like a pretty similar experience, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A lot of what the rest of the world is dealing with. So sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear it, but yeah.
We're in this together.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I kind of want to know as well, just like, how has it affected you personally, Judy, before we move on any further? Have you been able to not see any family, or has it been hard for you?
Actually, my grandpa tested positive to COVID-19. I think he's 70-something, and he was admitted to the hospital. And it was actually, I think it traumatized him because he got to intensive care, and a nurse there told him, Grandpa, when you get here, that means you're going to die. You will never see your kids again.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and then my grandpa cried, and he said if he knew it was going to be like that, then he would have rather stayed home or something like that. And I said, I know, Grandpa. But he made it. He's still alive. He's actually really strong right now. He's recuperating. Good.
I can't believe
so
that's great.
Grandpa, he beat it. It's not impossible.
Nice.
Yes,
we can do it.
That's great news. But yeah, what a bad nurse. That's what a bad thing to say to someone.
I know, right?
I'm glad your grandpa is doing okay. Hopefully he continues to get better.
Yeah, thanks for telling us about your experience with COVID in Tahiti.
Shall we move on?
Yeah, happy to.
Do you have a problem for us that you want us to solve?
Like, are you struggling with anything at the moment? It can be like really small.
Flexibility.
Flexibility?
I'm not very flexible. Yeah, how do you train your joints to be flexible?
I think it's
like, is it possible?
Yeah.
For a person, for example, for a person like I'm really tall. Well, tall-ish.
Yep, you're a Tahitian goddess. Yep.
Stop it. So yeah, and then like I cannot touch my toes without my knees bending. Does anyone have a problem? Like, have a solution to that?
I also can't, and I'm like half the size of you, so.
So yeah, like, is there a remedy to that? Because I stretch a lot.
Yeah,
but I still cannot do it.
Oh, you go.
I used to do gymnastics, and there are stretches that you can.
I forgot that about you.
Do for that. Well, it was a really long time ago.
I know.
I was like, anyway, but yeah, you can look up stretches online. It's probably the easiest thing, rather than me telling it over the podcast. But yeah, it's just a matter of building up. It's like building up strength or anything else. You can build up flexibility. So like,
I've been doing that for a year. I still can't. Do you think it's hopeless?
No.
Well, how long do you you have to hold the stretch for at least a minute, if not more?
Oh, no, actually, I like a stretch for 20 minutes. Like it's a whole circuit. Going to like the doctors and stuff. And, well, maybe it like got better-ish.
It probably has. Maybe take like progress photos or something. Take a picture today and then take a picture in 6 months of the stretch and see how far you've gone.
Sometimes when you want to do like yoga or something, you need to be flexible, because else it just looks like you look like a machine that needs oil, like you're trying to be really, really, really looking good, but I have this sound behind my ear that goes, it sounds weird. It just looks weird. I don't know. So if there are people out there who are very flexible, just know you're lucky. You're favored by God. Just know that. Okay?
I feel like the toe one, so there's like multiple different stretches. They used to make us point your toes as hard as you can and then stretch. And then in 10 seconds, breathe out and lean forward a little bit further and do that again and again. So you do that for like 30 seconds. And then so instead of having your toes pointed, you have them picked up as high as they can go.
Flexed.
Yeah, you flex your feet back and then you do the same thing again. And it just stretches different muscle groups because you have so many different sets of muscles in your legs. And so you have to do slightly different variations to get the full benefit of stretching, I think.
I know there are like YouTube series online. I know like Blogilates is a good example of one that do like 30 days to the splits, and they have like a whole series of what you should do for 30 days so that you can eventually, like what kind of things you should do.
I also like a lot of TikToks actually try to teach people a lot of stuff.
I saw one about how you should learn how to do no-handed cartwheels. I really want to try it, but I feel like it will end badly for me.
Aerials.
Yeah.
Is it a bit like reality show? Like in reality shows, are they really telling the truth? Are you sure? Like if I watch a 2-minute video about how to do the split when I've never done that before, it's gonna work? Do you really think I can? I'm very perplexed. I don't know.
But you may as well try it. Yeah. Try it and think positive thoughts and see what happens.
I can do it. And then I hear the when I literally just lose a muscle or something.
My other suggestion is like maybe try yoga. I know yin yoga is like all about sitting in uncomfortable stretches. Maybe that is something that would help, but we'll see. All right. Shall we quickly do our recommendations for the week?
For sure, dude.
Do you have one, Sam?
Don't I know it? Man, I'm stacked with recommendations this week. Oh, yes. This is super irrelevant to this episode that we've just been chatting about, but I can't tell you how much this show made me laugh. It's like, if you've heard of Auntie Donna, you're going to love it. Auntie Donna's Big Old House of Fun. It's a Netflix show that came out last week. And it's just a sketch comedy show. It's super absurd. You're going to love it or you're going to hate it. But I thought it was hilarious. It's really funny. Sketch comedy show on Netflix. Auntie Donna's Big Old House of Fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm literally looking in my bag to see if I have anything to recommend. And I don't.
Judy, do you have any recommendations for our listeners?
Actually, I watched this super nice animated movie, if anyone is interested in something really cute, really soft, really touching. I don't know if you know, it's actually on Netflix. It's called Spirited Away.
I have been wanting to watch that for so long. Don't spoil it for me because I really want to watch it.
Do it. I was like, oh my goodness. It's like very touching, very touching.
I'm going to watch it as soon as my semester of uni is finished. I'm so excited. I've been wanting to watch it for so long.
That's a really old movie, isn't it?
Spirited Away.
Yeah. Has it been remade?
I don't know.
It's from like 2001.
I think
maybe.
Something like that. I think it's like around the same time as Princess Mononoke, if you know what that is. Very peculiar animated movie.
Yeah.
But then again, if you would like a book, I could also recommend you a really nice book. It's about New Zealand. Yeah. But more about Maori culture. It's called Potiki. It's really amazing. So if anyone's wondering about the history of New Zealand and how people actually reacted to the idea of development, with developers wanting land to build hotels, and how actually Maori people as a community decided to react to that and fight against them, please read it. Very entertaining, very touching too. It's just amazing.
Awesome. How do you spell it?
It's Potiii, and it's by Patricia Grace.
Nice. I have thought of a recommendation in this time. And I am incredibly late to this bandwagon. And I also need to put out a little statement saying I'm only just up to season 3. So please, no listeners spoil this for me. I know everybody else has finished it, but I've started watching Stranger Things. And
yes.
I love it. but it is really not a show for me. I get so stressed and I get like the suspense and like all of it is just too much. And so I've started watching it with Will because I can't handle it by myself, which is why we're watching it very slowly because it's hard to find time to get together to watch it. So don't spoil it for me. I'm only in season 3. Only just started season 3.
I've never watched that.
It's really good, but it is a lot. It's not a feel-good show.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
There are moments, and then there are moments where I'm like, I can't breathe. I am so stressed. So, but it's good. I'm liking it.
A little bit of horror.
Thank you so much for being on, Judy. It was so good to catch up with you again and to hear your perspective. It's not one that is often brought around. Like, I don't know, you don't hear from a lot of people from Tahiti. In my life anyway, it's just not, you're not on our news and you're not sort of like in our popular culture. So it's really nice to hear your perspective.
Yeah. And especially I loved hearing about your struggles with translation. That was hilarious.
Yeah. You also laughed a lot. Don't lie. I know you laughed a lot.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
It was great.
I love to hear that. No, but yeah, thanks so much again for joining us. We'd love to have you on the podcast and hopefully you can come back again sometime.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can subscribe, leave us a review, follow us on Instagram, show us where you're listening by posting and tagging us on Instagram. We also have a Patreon account and you can subscribe there and support us if you'd like.
Also, the music is by The Vinyl Press and you can find them on Instagram at The Vinyl Press.
Yeah, and send us any problems that you have. We want to solve them for you.
Woo!
Go on.
Go.
Hi, you're listening to Sam and Em Solve the World's Problems.
Sorry.
See? Just drink it.
I feel like it'd be really funny if you said that and then I did that.
Okay. Take a sip.
There you go.
Hi, you're listening to Sam and Em Solve the World's Problems. ASMR.
I'm sorry, I'm really tired.
Big problems. One of my problems today is that Sam is an idiot.
Okay, that's fair. That's a problem for every day though, so is it really just a problem for today?
No, but today it is bothering me in particular.
Well, today we have a great guest joining us.
No, that's not the intro.
Okay, sorry. Let's go.
Hi, you're listening. Nope. Hey, nope. Hi, you're listening.